My name is Erin Calloway. I'm 29 years old. I live in Portland, Oregon. And for most of my life, I thought being the reliable one in the family was a badge of honor. I paid bills without being asked. I organized birthdays, anniversaries, even cleaned out Mom's old basement when she remarried and wanted a fresh start. I never made a fuss, even when it cut into my own savings or my weekend rest. I didn't do it for praise. I did it because I believed family meant something. But last Tuesday, something inside me cracked. It started with a text. A simple, cheery message from Mom. "Can you cover Barry's birthday dinner? We're thinking steakhouse. He deserves it." Barry is her new husband. We've barely spoken. I smiled politely at their wedding 6 months ago and bought them a gift card. That was the extent of our bond. And now she wanted me to spend hundreds of dollars on his 60th birthday celebration, as if it were some unspoken duty. I didn't answer right away. I stared at the message, feeling my pulse quicken, not with anger, but exhaustion. I had just finished covering a dental bill for Mom's emergency root canal a few weeks earlier. No one said thank you. No one even followed. Up to ask how that dent in my budget affected me. Now here was another demand, wrapped in expectation, disguised as normal. So I said no. Not rudely, not with resentment, just no. I typed, "Sorry, I can't swing that right now. Maybe another time." I hit send. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I opened Instagram while waiting for a reply. I noticed something odd. Mom's name was no longer appearing in my followers list. I clicked on her profile, and instead of pictures of sunsets and dinners with Barry, I saw, "User not found." My stomach dropped. I switched to Messenger. Our long thread vanished. It hadn't even been archived. It was gone. I texted again. "Everything okay?" Green bubble. Not delivered. She had blocked me. Not over a fight. Not over betrayal. Over a declined dinner tab. It's strange how silence can scream. I stared at my phone, still sitting on the couch, not moving for a while. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat there, stunned, watching the weight of years of quiet sacrifices unravel over one boundary. One no. One sentence too many in a life filled with, "of course." And, "don't worry about it." I scrolled back through old transactions on my bank app. Groceries for her when she was sick, gas money for Barry when his car broke down, the down payment on their honeymoon Airbnb, 1,000 invisible lines connecting me to responsibilities no one else wanted, all severed now with a block. It wasn't just the block itself. It was what it meant. It meant that my value had always been conditional, that my place in her world was rented, not owned, paid monthly in quiet compliance, that to her, I wasn't a daughter, I was a convenience, a backup, plan. A wallet with feelings she didn't care to explore. I replayed the moment I met Barry for the first time. He hadn't asked me much, just shook my hand and thanked me for helping her so much. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I remembered thinking, he doesn't even know me. And maybe that was the point. Maybe Mom didn't want anyone else to really know who I was. She just needed me to be what she told them I was. Reliable, generous, good. Predictable. But something shifted that day. The silence, the green bubble, the empty message thread, those weren't wounds. They were awakenings. I didn't just get blocked. I got freed. Freed from the illusion that love is measured by what you give. Freed from the guilt of drawing a line. The worst part? No one else in the family texted. No one asked why I disappeared from the group chat. No one said, "Are you okay?" And I realized maybe they weren't used to me having boundaries because I never showed them one until now. The irony is that I had already bought him a gift, not because I wanted to, but because I thought it would keep the peace. A sleek smartwatch, priced at $699 after tax. The kind Barry had once casually mentioned over lunch when I visited Mom. "They say these things track your heart rate and stress," he said with a laugh, patting his stomach like it was an afterthought. I had nodded, smiled, tucked that comment away. That's what I do. I remember. I try. It sat in my hallway cabinet for a week, still in the box, still with the receipt. I had planned to give it to him at the dinner, the same dinner I'd been asked to pay for, the same dinner I declined. When I got blocked, I took the box out and just stared at it that evening, my hands resting lightly on the edges, almost like it might bite me. And in a way, it did. Because inside that perfect packaging was everything I had started to resent about myself. The habit of anticipating other people's needs, of buying approval in the language they understood best. Gifts, money, silence. It wasn't generosity anymore. It was survival. Emotional bartering dressed as love. I thought about that wedding day, how Mom insisted on a full family photo, even though I had flown in the night before, straight from a 10-hour workday and barely any sleep. She didn't ask if I had time off. She just said, "It'll mean a lot if you're there." I paid for my flight. I paid for the dress. I paid for the hotel. I paid for the toaster oven they added to the registry last minute. And when the photographer called the Callaways, she looked at me and said, No, this is for the new family. Barry's side." The flash went off. My face wasn't in the frame. That moment came back now like a slap. Not because of the photo, but because of the ease with which I had been asked to step aside. How easily I became optional. And now, how quickly I became the villain. The next day, I opened Facebook and saw her post. Dinner plans changed. Blessed to have a husband who knows his worth. Family first. No tags, no names, just that. But I knew it was a message, wrapped in public pleasantries. I didn't belong in the version of her life she wanted to show. I was the inconvenient truth. Someone who had been useful until she wanted different. I remembered her words after the wedding when I gently mentioned how strange it felt to be left out of certain things. "You're strong, Erin," she said like it was a compliment. "You don't need the spotlight. You've got your own life." Yes, I had my own life. A life where I didn't ask for much. A life where I paid my bills, made my own coffee, walked to work every morning with earbuds in just to tune out the silence. A life that was mine, but only because no one ever asked to be a part of it. They just assumed I'd always show up to theirs. And now that I hadn't, now that I'd said one small no, I was cast out like a stain on a white dress. Too noticeable to ignore, too disruptive to keep around. I stared at the smartwatch again. At the sleek screen, the neat box, the idea of a gift meant to say, "I see you," even when I didn't feel seen at all. I put it back on the shelf. Not out of malice, just out of clarity. That wasn't my burden anymore. What hurt most wasn't being blocked. It was realizing that I had become invisible long before that. That somewhere along the line, my usefulness had been mistaken for love, my silence for agreement, and my presence for obligation. I sat on the edge of my bed, scrolling through old texts with Mom, trying to find something, anything that felt real. Most were logistical. Requests, updates, things she needed. Rarely a, "How are you?" Even rarer, a "thank you." It wasn't cruel, just transactional. And in that moment, something cold settled over me. Not sadness, not even anger. Just a recognition that I had spent years giving and giving, hoping that one day someone would notice. But they never had. Not really. Not unless I stopped. And now, I had. There's something no one prepares you for when you're the capable daughter. You age faster, not in years, but in expectations. I realized that somewhere around 25. When Mom started asking me for help with her taxes instead of asking how my job was going, when birthdays shifted from cake and candles to polite texts and Venmo transfers, when I stopped being the daughter and quietly became the backup plan. I'm 33 now. No kids, no husband, no drama, just a steady job, a rent-controlled apartment in Portland, and an inbox full of family requests disguised as updates. I'm not bitter about the stability I've built. I worked hard for it. I stayed late at work when others left early. I learned to stretch $1, to plan months in advance, to never rely on anyone else. That kind of self-sufficiency is respected from a distance. But what no one sees is that it makes you an easy target too, because when they look at you, they don't see the woman who holds herself together through sheer discipline. They see the one with extra time, extra space, extra money. And the math becomes simple. She doesn't need as much, so she can give more. So when Mom called to say her car needed new brakes, there wasn't even a question. "Just a few hundred, sweetheart, I'll pay you back," she'd say. But she never did. When Barry's dog needed surgery, "It's an emergency, Erin. You love animals, right?" I wired $900 that same night. They didn't thank me, just said, "We'll figure it out soon," and changed the topic. And when I brought it up, softly, carefully, always trying not to sound ungrateful, Mom would smile, tilt her head, and say, "You're not struggling, are you?" As if struggle was the only valid reason to be spared from responsibility. I wasn't struggling, no, but I was tired, and that difference between being fine and being okay was one she never seemed to understand. Because in her eyes, help was something you earned through visible hardship. Bruised knees, broken bones, eviction notices. Anything less was luxury, but I didn't ask for luxury. I just wanted fairness. The most absurd part? Mom still called me the adult in the room, especially when my younger cousins got into trouble. When Zoe dropped out of college. When Lucas racked up $2,000 in credit card debt buying sneakers and electronics. Guess who got the call to talk to them? Me. Because I had my life together. Because they needed a role model, but being the role model didn't mean I got respect. It just meant I had no margin for error, no space to break, no room to say no. Because I had built a life with walls so straight and clean, everyone assumed I didn't need help keeping them up. Even after the birthday blow-up, I got a text from my aunt the following week. "Hey, sweetie, can you help with the deposit for Grandpa's new meds? Your mom said you'd know what to do." My thumb hovered over the screen for a long time. That moment, more than anything, solidified the truth I'd been avoiding. I wasn't being treated like family. I was being treated like a system, one that functioned without failure, one that never said no, one that could be counted on, but never counted with. I didn't reply to that text. For the first time in years, I let the silence stretch long and unbroken. That night, I sat down with my budgeting spreadsheet, color-coded tabs, formulas tracking every cent, not out of obsession, but survival. And I counted, not just money, time, emotional bandwidth, mental space. And I saw how many months I'd spent paying for things that had nothing to do with me. How many holidays I'd skipped vacations to afford someone else's unexpected expense. How many times I'd heard, "You're too responsible," right before being handed another bill. Too responsible for help, but never too responsible to pay. The truth hit me like a slow wave. I was the adult when they needed a fixer, and the child when they needed an excuse. And somewhere in that mess, I lost the right to be cared for, to be checked on, to be included without being asked for something. They didn't ask what I needed. They asked what I could give. And for a long time, I gave without question. Not because I was generous, but because I thought love meant absorbing the weight without making a sound. But silence isn't love. And being needed isn't the same as being valued. That realization didn't come with fireworks or rage. It came quietly, like setting something down after holding it too long. My spine straightened. My jaw unclenched. And for the first time in years, I looked at the inbox full of requests and thought, not this time. I wasn't too grown for help. I was just tired of pretending I didn't need any. I first noticed it when I logged into Facebook late one evening, aimlessly scrolling while trying to calm the hum in my chest that had replaced real rest. A picture caught my eye. Mom, Aunt Denise, Barry, and even my cousin Zoe, all sitting around a table with balloons in the background. A cake in the center, laughter frozen mid-frame. The caption read, "So lucky to have such a strong, supportive family." I blinked. I hadn't heard about a gathering. No one had texted, no invite, no mention. I scrolled again, checking the date. It was yesterday. The same day I sat in my apartment eating leftover pasta alone, replying to work emails I didn't owe anyone after hours. At first I told myself it was nothing. Maybe it was last minute. Maybe it was just the cousins. But then I saw a comment. Mom had written, "So good to have everyone together again." And Zoe replied, "Finally, the whole gang." The whole gang. The next morning, I texted Mom. Nothing accusatory, just a simple, "Hey, didn't know you were all getting together. Looked fun." No reply. I waited. Still nothing. Later that evening, I texted Aunt Denise, hoping maybe she'd mention something. Some accidental oversight? Her answer came, casual and clear. "Oh, I thought you knew. We've got a new family chat group, just easier to organize things that way. New family chat. Easier. I checked my messages. No new. Group notifications. I scrolled through every thread. Nothing. I wasn't added. I wasn't included. And suddenly everything clicked with sharp, unmistakable clarity. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was exclusion. Precise, intentional, and utterly silent. At first, my stomach sank with that old, familiar ache. The one that comes when you realize you're not just left out. You were never meant to be included. But under the ache, something colder rose. Not sadness, not disappointment. Just a hard, clean recognition. I wasn't in the group because I had become inconvenient. Too many questions, too many refusals, too many reminders that I was no longer playing the role they had quietly cast me in. Provider, fixer, cheerleader. With a credit card, they didn't want that version of me anymore. They wanted the version that kept giving without asking. The one who paid the bills and stayed quiet. The one who never asked, "Why wasn't I invited?" That version was easier to love. I tried to tell myself it didn't matter. That family, dynamics are always messy. That maybe it was just a tech error. But deep down, I knew better. You don't forget to add someone to a group chat they've been in for years. You remove them, and then you pretend it was never personal. But it was. Being excluded is never just about one party or one message. It's about what that silence says. It says, "You're not part of us when you're not useful." It says, "We'd rather keep things peaceful than honest." It says, "You're too much now." It wasn't about the missed cake or the conversation or the photos. It was about erasure. A slow, deliberate phase out of the one person who always said yes, now that she had started saying no. I didn't cry. Not then. I didn't rage or write a long message demanding an explanation. I just stared at the screen and let the numbness settle. I thought about the years of group gifts I helped organize, the cards I always remembered to send, the way I made everyone feel seen while slowly disappearing myself. And now I was the invisible one. That night, I muted every family. Threads still open in my phone. Not out of spite, but out of preservation. I needed space from the passive-aggressive texts, the fake warmth that only appeared when someone needed something. I needed space to grieve a version of family I had tried so hard to believe in, the version where love and support flowed both ways, but that version didn't exist. Not for me. So I created a new thread that night. Just one contact. Myself. A new note labeled "Things I Will No Longer Apologize For." And the first entry I typed, hands steady and heart strangely calm, was this: "For not begging to be included in a family that decided I was only valuable when I was silent." And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally starting to be heard, even if only by myself. A week after muting the family threads, I received a manila envelope in the mail with no return address. I opened it with that quiet dread that comes from already knowing you're about to be pulled back into something you'd tried to walk away from. Inside was a printed invoice. No letter, no explanation, just a number at the top, 7/14/12, and a note scribbled on the margin. "Birthday dinner and gift. Your share." I stared at it for a long time, half expecting my mind to fill in some context that would make this normal, maybe a misunderstanding, a mistake. But no, the amount matched the conversation I'd overheard from a family photo caption earlier that week. The dinner mom had organized for her new husband at some steakhouse uptown, the one she used to say was too flashy for our taste. I hadn't gone. I hadn't been invited. And yet, someone thought I should help pay for it. A second paper in the envelope was a receipt. Gold watch, luxury wrapping. The price tag alone made me wince. That was 3 weeks of groceries, half my rent, or the dentist appointment I'd been putting off. And yet someone had decided that my role, even now, was to fund celebrations I wasn't even welcome at. I folded the papers and slid them back into the envelope, setting it on the table like it was contaminated. My heart didn't race. I didn't feel rage, just an eerie, exhausted sort of clarity. This wasn't just an oversight. This was the system they had built around me, continuing to operate without my consent. I was never asked if I wanted to contribute. I was simply told, through implication and silence, that I would. That's the thing about families like mine. Once you become the one who always helps, always covers, always steps up, they stop checking whether you're okay. They stop asking altogether. And they definitely stop noticing when you quietly start unraveling. I thought back to the years I'd sent money without hesitation. Mom's heating bill in February, Aunt Denise's dental work last spring, my sister's down payment loan that never made it to repayment. Every time I had told myself I was doing the right thing, that it wasn't about being thanked, it was about doing what family does. But over time, that belief turned into a trap. Because the moment I stopped, the warmth disappeared. My silence had never been seen as generosity. It was seen as compliance. Now that I wasn't sending the checks automatically, they weren't just disappointed, they were offended. The next few days brought a flurry of quiet retaliation. Cousin Zoe removed me from a shared streaming account. We'd split for years. I found out through a buffering screen. Then, my sister unfollowed me on social media. Not a word. Gone. My aunt left a passive-aggressive comment under an old post about some people forgetting where they came from. It all pointed to one thing. The role they had assigned me was no longer being performed, and the backlash wasn't about confusion. It was about punishment. I hadn't signed a single contract, but for years I had functioned like I had. Namtha, unspoken agreement, I give, they receive. I stay quiet, they stay close. I provide, they praise, until I stop. And now that I was no longer that version of myself, they didn't know what to do with me. Or worse, they did. And they chose. To replace me with resentment. It's funny how silence can feel louder than shouting. I wasn't blocked. I wasn't cursed out. But I was erased. Invoice by invoice. One cold gesture at a time. And the hardest part? A small part of me still hesitated. Still felt the pull of guilt. Still wondered if I should just pay. Just once. More. Just to keep the peace. But that peace had always come at the cost of my well-being. And now, for the first time, I was calculating the real price. Not just of money sent, but of years lost to being the quiet one, the reliable one, the invisible one who showed up for everyone else but herself. That night, I pulled out a notebook and made a list. Not of debts or due dates, but of boundaries. At the top, I wrote, in bold letters, I do not owe anyone the cost of their silence. Underneath that, I listed the things I would no longer accept. Surprise bills, emotional blackmail. Disguised as just tradition, manipulation in the name of love. And at the very bottom, in sharp pen, I wrote one last line. If I wasn't invited to the table, I'm not paying for the meal. I closed the notebook, placed it on my nightstand, and turned off the light. For the first time in months, I didn't check my phone before bed, and in that quiet darkness, I realized I wasn't alone, not in the way that used to hurt. This time, I was simply with myself, and that finally felt like enough. The invoice sat unopened on my kitchen table for over a week before I finally dropped it into the shredder. The paper crackled, crumbled, and disappeared into static dust. Just like the version of me that had once believed love was proven through payment. I stood there for a long time afterward, staring at the empty tray, wondering how many pieces of myself I had quietly fed into situations just like this, smiling through hurt, swallowing resentment, writing checks in the name of family. But not anymore. Something had shifted in me, and I could feel it in the way my spine straightened a little more each day. It wasn't anger. That had come and gone. It was a kind of solid stillness, the sort you feel when you finally stepped out of the current that was sweeping you under and stood up on your own ground. I had finally stopped treating family like a subscription service, where love was renewed monthly, automatically withdrawn from my bank account, and never truly acknowledged. Instead of sending money or replying to vague guilt-ridden texts, I spent time with people who didn't view me as a transaction. I reconnected with an old friend from college, someone who remembered my birthday without needing a calendar reminder or a financial request attached. We sat in a tiny cafe near the pier one rainy afternoon, drinking overpriced coffee and laughing about things that had nothing to do with duty or guilt. I felt seen. Not as the strong one or the provider, just me. And that version of me, the quiet, soft one beneath the armor, was finally getting a voice. I started saying no more freely, not cruelly, not with rage, just with certainty. No, I won't send money for the third emergency this month. No, I won't pretend your silence isn't punishment in disguise. No, I won't play the role of the dutiful daughter while you rewrite the script without me. And the more I said no, the more I realized how few people had ever said yes to me. Not out of obligation, not because I gave them something, but simply because they wanted to. That realization hurt deeply. But in that pain, there was freedom. Family, I learned, isn't the people who demand your presence only when you're useful. It's not the ones who text when the bill arrives and vanish when you need someone to listen. It's not a group chat that forgets you until they need help covering dinner reservations or a vacation deposit. Family is presence. It's reciprocity. It's earned, not owed. I used to think setting boundaries would make me feel isolated. But the truth? I've never felt more whole, more in control, more at peace. These days, I live smaller but lighter. My bank balance isn't drained at the end of every month, and my sleep isn't broken by midnight requests. I cook meals that only serve me and maybe a friend or two who stays late just to talk. I walk through my apartment and see a space I've created entirely on my terms. No one else's needs dictate the temperature of my life anymore. And when I get the occasional message, another "we miss you" or "can you help just this once?" I don't flinch. I don't engage. I no longer confuse guilt with love. Never sent another payment. Never called back. Never explained my silence. Because the truth is, I had explained myself for years. Through every act of support, through every dollar sent, through every need I had postponed to meet theirs. They knew. They just didn't care to see it. But now, I don't need them to. Now I live with the kind of clarity that only comes from walking away from what never truly held you. I wake up without waiting for someone to ask how I'm doing. I ask myself, and I listen, and I respond. Sometimes I still scroll through old photos, birthdays, anniversaries, holidays where my presence was less about sharing joy and more about fulfilling expectations. And for a moment, there's a pang, like pressing on a bruise. But then I remember what I gained by stepping away. My life, my voice, my peace. And I wouldn't trade that for all the dinner reservations or birthday parties in the world, because family isn't a button labeled "send funds." It's not a list of obligations. It's not a role you're drafted into and expected to perform for life. It's supposed to be love. And love, real love, doesn't come with an invoice. So if standing up for myself means losing their version of family, I'll take that loss, because I finally learned that my worth doesn't decrease when I stop giving. It finally starts to show.